The first time I saw him, I almost didn't notice him at all. It was the start of the new school year, a blur of backpacks, coffee cups, and parents pretending they weren't exhausted. My son, Ethan, tugged on my hand as we walked into the classroom, nervous and quiet, the way he always was on the first day. "Mom, that's him," he whispered. "Mr. Carter." I looked up, and there he was, writing something on the whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, a piece of chalk balanced effortlessly between his fingers. He looked young, maybe early 30s, with that calm, collected energy teachers aren't supposed to have on day one. He turned when he heard us. "Ethan, right? Welcome back." His voice was steady, warm. Then he smiled at me. "You must be his mom. It's nice to meet you." I don't know what I expected, maybe another polite handshake and a rehearsed greeting, but his tone was different. He spoke to me the way people used to, before everything in my life became about schedules and responsibilities. We talked for less than a minute, maybe two. He asked about Ethan's favorite subjects, what he liked to read. Nothing more. But when I walked away, something stayed, a faint feeling, like I'd been seen. That night, while helping Ethan pack his bag for the next day, he said, "Mr. Carter's funny. Not like my old teacher." I smiled. "Yeah? That's good." "Yeah. You'd like him." I didn't answer, but the truth was, I already did. The next morning, when I dropped Ethan off, Mr. Carter waved from the classroom door. It was nothing. Just a small gesture. But it made me realize how long it had been since anyone noticed I was there. It started with a message. Nothing personal, just a short note from the school app. "Hi Mrs. Lewis, just letting you know Ethan did great on his presentation today. You should be proud." I read it twice before replying. "Thank you." He was really nervous about it. He didn't look nervous at all, he wrote back. "You're raising a confident kid." It was small. Simple. But it lingered with me the rest of the evening, the way kindness does when you've forgotten how it feels. Over the next few weeks, I saw him often. At pickup, in the hallway, outside after school. He'd always say something, never too much, just enough to make me smile. "Ethan's reading is improving fast. Don't forget the field trip forms." Or sometimes just, "Long day?" And somehow it sounded like he actually wanted to hear the answer. It wasn't flirting. Not really. It was warmth. And that made it worse. One Friday, I brought cookies for the class, the store-bought kind, because I'd run out of time to bake. He smiled when he saw them. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," I said. "But I wanted to." He looked at me a moment longer than he should have. Not long enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. That evening, when I got home, I caught myself opening the app again, scrolling up through our messages, rereading them like they meant something. I hated that I did it. I told myself it was nothing. Just a teacher being nice. But deep down, I knew, I wasn't waiting for my ex to text anymore. I was waiting for Mr. Carter. Mornings used to feel like survival, coffee, traffic, drop-off, work, repeat. But lately, I found myself taking a little more time before leaving the house. Maybe adding mascara, maybe changing into a different blouse. I told myself it was just because I wanted to look awake. But deep down, I knew who I hoped would notice. Mr. Carter was always there by the gate when we arrived, greeting every parent, every child. Yet when he said, "Good morning, Mrs. Lewis," it felt like those words were meant only for me. Sometimes we'd talk a few minutes longer than necessary. About Ethan, about the weather, about the new book display in his classroom. Harmless things. But those small talks started feeling like something I looked forward to, a pause in my day that no one else knew about. One morning, I dropped off Ethan and turned to leave, but he stopped me. "You always rush out so fast," he said, smiling. "At least let me offer you coffee, the teacher's lounge version." "It's terrible, but it's free." I laughed. That's a dangerous combination. Then I'll owe you a real one next time, he said. It was a joke. Probably. But I spent the rest of the day thinking about that sentence, replaying the tone, the way he said next time. That evening, while helping Ethan with homework, he looked up and said, "Mr. Carter said you're really nice. He said I got that from you." I smiled, pretending my heart didn't skip a beat. Somewhere between math problems and bedtime stories, I realized something had changed. He wasn't just Ethan's teacher anymore. He was part of my day, and I didn't know when that had started happening. It was one of those warm Fridays that felt more like spring than fall, the kind of day when even the teachers seemed lighter. I arrived early to pick up Ethan, standing by the fence as the last few kids ran out. Mr. Carter was helping one of them zip up his backpack, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. He had that same calm patience I'd noticed the first day. When he stood up and saw me, he smiled, the kind of smile that looks like it's trying not to mean too much. "Ethan's just grabbing his art project," he said, walking over. "You've got a future Picasso on your hands." I laughed. "That's generous. Half the time I can't tell if he's drawing a dog or a dinosaur." "Then he's already an artist," he said. We talked a few minutes more, long after the other parents had gone. The parking lot was quiet, the air soft and golden. When Ethan came running out, he waved his project in the air and shouted, "Mr. Carter said we can paint outside next week." "That's true," he said. "Fresh air makes better art." Then he looked back at me. "Speaking of which, there's a cafe near here with outdoor seating. You ever go there?" It caught me off guard. "I used to," I said. "You should again," he said lightly. "The coffee's terrible, but the sunlight's good." I smiled. "Is that your teacher way of giving homework?" "Maybe," he said. "But you don't have to turn this one in." The moment stretched. It was harmless, a shared laugh, nothing more. But when I drove home later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That evening, I caught myself scrolling through Ethan's class photos on the school page, stopping on one where Mr. Carter was smiling in the background. It wasn't love. It wasn't even attraction, not yet. It was warmth, and after years of silence, warmth felt dangerously close to something I'd forgotten how to handle. The message came late in the afternoon. "Hey, Mrs. Lewis, sorry to bother you after hours. Ethan mentioned you've been helping him with the science fair project. If you want, I can bring some materials from school tomorrow. It might make things easier." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Teachers didn't text this much. Or maybe they did, I wouldn't know. It had been years since anyone had gone out of their way just to make something easier for me. I typed back, "That's kind of you, but I don't want to take your time." He replied almost instantly, "You're not. I'll be around after class anyway. Come by if you want." The next day, I told myself I was just being polite. Helping Ethan, that's all. But I still put on the blue blouse that made my eyes look brighter, not because of him, I told myself, but because I needed a little confidence. When I arrived, the school was already quiet. The hallways smelled faintly of chalk and sanitizer, the kind of emptiness that comes after children leave. Mr. Carter was stacking papers when I knocked on the doorframe. "You came," he said, smiling. "I was beginning to think you'd change your mind." "I almost did," I admitted. He cleared a space on his desk. "So, Ethan's project, a model volcano, right? Classic choice." I nodded, and for the next half hour we talked about baking soda ratios and poster layouts like it was the most important thing in the world. His sleeves were rolled up, a small ink smudge near his wrist. Every time he leaned over the table, I caught the faint scent of his cologne, clean, subtle, familiar. At some point, I realized I was laughing. Really laughing, that unguarded kind I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. "See," he said softly. "Told you this would make things easier." There was a pause, one of those moments that isn't supposed to mean anything, but it does. His gaze lingered, warm and unreadable. Then he stepped back, picking up his notebook as if to break the silence. "Anyway," he said, "I'll leave the extra paints by Ethan's cubby tomorrow. You'll thank me when your kitchen doesn't explode." I smiled. "I already do." When I walked out, the hall lights flickered, motion sensors waking up as I passed. My heels echoed on the floor, and for a second, I wanted to turn around. To say something simple, like thank you or good night, anything that didn't sound like what I was actually thinking. But I didn't. I kept walking, heart beating too fast for a conversation that was supposed to be about science projects. That night, when I tucked Ethan into bed, he asked, "Mom, why were you at school so long?" I hesitated, brushing his hair back. "We were just talking about your project." He smiled sleepily. "Mr. Carter likes you." I froze for a heartbeat. "He likes everyone, honey. He's a nice teacher." Ethan yawned. "No, not like that." He fell asleep before I could respond, leaving his words hanging in the dark, and I lay awake wondering if maybe, just maybe, my son had seen something I was still pretending wasn't there. After that day, I tried to pull away. I started dropping Ethan off earlier, leaving before the bell, keeping my eyes anywhere but on Mr. Carter. It wasn't hard to justify, I was busy, tired, focused on work. That's what I told myself. But the truth was, avoiding him took more effort than seeing him ever did. For a while, it worked. Our conversations shrank into quick nods, polite smiles. He didn't message anymore, and I didn't reach out. But every time I walked past the classroom, every time I heard his voice talking to the students, my chest tightened, a quiet reminder that something unresolved was still there. One afternoon, Ethan forgot his lunchbox. I drove back to school, annoyed at myself for not double-checking. The halls were nearly empty when I found his classroom door still open. Mr. Carter was at his desk, grading papers. He looked up, surprised but smiling. "Hey, you didn't have to come all the way back," he said. I could have given him mine. "Then you'd have gone hungry," I said. We laughed softly, that same easy rhythm I'd missed. But as the silence settled, his expression shifted, "Careful now." "I've been trying to give you space," he said quietly. "I noticed," I replied. He hesitated. "Was it something I did?" I shook my head. "No. It's just, complicated." He nodded, looking down at the papers again. "Yeah," he said. "It usually is." I placed the lunchbox on the table and turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Can I ask you something?" I turned. "Do you ever feel like you're holding your breath all the time?" It was such an odd question, strange, simple, honest, and it hit me in a way I didn't expect. "Yes," I said softly. "All the time." For a second, neither of us moved. The air between us felt heavy, alive, like the pause before thunder. Then the bell rang, sharp, breaking the spell. I muttered a quick goodbye and walked out fast, the sound of children's laughter chasing me down the hallway. That night, I lay awake thinking about that moment, about the way he'd looked at me, about how close I'd come to saying something I shouldn't. Keeping distance wasn't working. It only made me realize how close we already were. The weather had started to change, that in-between part of the year when the mornings were cool but the afternoons still held on to summer. Ethan had been talking nonstop about the upcoming school fair, and Mr. Carter had sent out a message asking for volunteers. I signed up before I could stop myself. Saturday came, and the school grounds were full of laughter, kids running with balloons, the smell of popcorn in the air. I was helping at the raffle table when I saw him across the courtyard. He was wearing a simple gray shirt, sleeves rolled up, helping a group of kids fix a fallen banner. For a moment, he looked up and our eyes met, quick, unplanned, but enough to send that familiar rush through me. Later, when most of the parents had gone home and the cleanup started, he found me stacking empty boxes behind the gym. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "You've been working all day. You should go home." "So should you," I said. He smiled faintly. "I like staying after everyone leaves. It's quiet." We stood there for a few seconds, listening to the echo of distant laughter from the parking lot. Then he said, "You've been avoiding me again." I froze. "No, You have," he said gently. "And I get it. But pretending we don't feel something doesn't make it go away." His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. "You shouldn't say things like that," I whispered. He took a step closer, not enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell the faint scent of chalk and soap on his shirt. "I know," he said. "But I can't keep pretending this is normal." I swallowed hard. "You're my son's teacher." "I'm aware," he said. "Believe me, I remind myself every time I look at you." The silence that followed was unbearable, the kind that wraps around you, making it hard to breathe. He finally sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. You don't need this. You deserve peace, not more chaos." "Peace," I repeated, almost to myself. "I don't even remember what that feels like." He looked at me then, really looked, the way no one had in years. "You deserve to," he said quietly. A voice called from across the field, one of the teachers looking for him. We both stepped back, like waking from a dream. He turned to go, but before leaving, he said softly, "You can't keep pretending you don't know what this is." I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching him disappear into the crowd, my hands trembling around the stack of boxes. That night, his words followed me home like a shadow. He was right. I couldn't pretend anymore. The parent-teacher conference was supposed to be routine. 10 minutes per student, polite smiles, small talk about grades and progress. But when it was my turn, the room felt too quiet. He sat across from me at his desk, papers neatly stacked, the faint hum of the overhead lights filling the silence. "Ethan's doing really well," he said, voice steady. "He's focused. Kind." I smiled. "That's good to hear." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me longer than they should have. "You've done a great job with him." For a second, neither of us spoke. The air felt charged, like we were standing too close to something flammable. I tried to keep it professional. "Thank you. That means a lot." But then he said softly, "You look tired." It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Concern, not curiosity. Genuine. I didn't realize until then how long it had been since someone said something so simple and actually meant it. "I guess that's part of being a mom," I said, trying to laugh it off. He shook his head. "No. That's part of being alone." The sentence hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I couldn't look at him. I just stared at the papers on his desk, Ethan's drawings, spelling tests, fragments of a world I was supposed to keep separate from this one. He sighed. "I'm sorry. That was out of line." "It's okay," I said quietly. "You're not wrong." When the last conference ended, the hallways were empty. We both stayed to help clean up, folding chairs, stacking tables, pretending we had a reason to be there. At one point, he reached for the same stack of papers I did, and our hands brushed. It was barely a touch, but it stopped both of us cold. I looked up, and he was already looking at me, like he'd been waiting for this moment, unsure if it should happen or if it already had. He took a slow breath. "This shouldn't feel like this." "I know," I whispered. The janitor's keys jingled somewhere down the hallway, the reminder of a world outside that still existed. We both stepped back, pretending to focus on the mess around us. "Good night, Mrs. Lewis," he said finally. "Good night," I replied, but my voice cracked. When I got home, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, not recognizing the woman staring back. I wasn't sure if I was scared of what was happening, or of how much I wanted it to. It was almost the end of the semester when it happened. The air already had that sleepy stillness schools get before winter break, half-empty halls, paper snowflakes on windows, a mix of exhaustion and nostalgia. I came to pick up Ethan early. He'd forgotten his art folder, and I didn't want him to lose points. The front office was empty, so I walked straight to the classroom. The door was half open. Mr. Carter was there, alone, erasing the board. He turned when he heard me. "You're not supposed to be here yet," he said, smiling softly. "I know," I said. "Just rescuing forgotten masterpieces." He laughed. "He's got quite a collection of those." "Yeah," I said. "He takes after me, good at starting things, not finishing them." That made him pause. "I don't think that's true," he said quietly. I didn't know why that line hit me. Maybe because it wasn't about Ethan anymore. I took a step closer to the desk. "You always say things like that, simple, but somehow they stick." "Maybe that's because no one else says them," he said, setting the eraser down. We stood there, the classroom slowly dimming as the light from the window softened. The silence wasn't awkward this time. It was full, like both of us already knew what came next, but neither wanted to be the one to start it. "You've been trying to stay away again," he said. "I thought it would help." "Did it?" I shook my head. He came around the desk, stopping just close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "You know this can't go anywhere," he said. "I know." His voice dropped. "Then why does it feel like it already has?" For a long second, we just looked at each other, two people standing in the middle of something they shouldn't have started. I felt my breath catch, and before I could think, I said it, "You make me feel seen." That was all it took. The distance between us disappeared. His hand brushed mine, then my face, and when he leaned in, I didn't move. The kiss was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried every word we hadn't said. It lasted a heartbeat, maybe two, and then it was over. He stepped back immediately, his eyes wide, voice unsteady. "We can't," he whispered. "I know," I said again. But neither of us moved. The sound of children laughing somewhere down the hallway broke the moment. I turned toward the door, forcing myself to walk away, my heart pounding in my throat. That night, I kept replaying it, the look in his eyes, the way he said "we can't," and the terrifying truth hiding inside it. We already had. I barely remember driving home that day. My hands were on the wheel, but my mind was still in that classroom, replaying the sound of his voice, the warmth of his hand, the moment everything crossed a line we couldn't uncross. All night, the house felt wrong. Too still. Too aware. I sat by the window long after Ethan fell asleep, staring at the faint reflection of myself in the glass, a woman who looked calm, but wasn't. My phone buzzed once around midnight. "I'm sorry." That was all it said. I didn't reply. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but any answer would have meant admitting something real had happened. Instead, I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. But I couldn't stop thinking about how his lips had trembled when he whispered "we can't." Or how mine had answered "I know," but hadn't moved away. The next morning, I woke up early. Made breakfast. Packed lunches. Everything looked normal, but every sound, the kettle, the door, Ethan's laughter, felt distant, like I was watching my own life from somewhere outside of it. When we got to school, Mr. Carter was already there, helping students carry boxes for the winter fair. He looked up when he saw me, just for a second, and that was enough. No words. No smiles. Just that look, full of everything we'd done, and everything we shouldn't have. I almost turned around and left. But Ethan ran ahead, calling, "Morning, Mr. Carter." He smiled at him, perfectly, naturally, like nothing had changed. And I realized, in that moment, that everything had. That night had burned a line between who I was and who I'd just become. The days that followed blurred together. School drop-offs, work emails, late dinners, all of it looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything had changed. He stopped texting. I stopped lingering by the classroom. We both pretended the world hadn't tilted that day. But pretending takes effort, and lies, even small ones, start to leave marks. One afternoon, Ethan came home quiet. He dropped his backpack by the door and said, "Mr. Carter didn't smile today." I froze. "What do you mean?" He looked sad, he said, frowning. Did I do something wrong? I shook my head quickly, forcing a smile. Of course not, honey. But my heart sank. He was sad because of me. That night, I tried to distract myself, folding laundry, cleaning the kitchen, doing anything to keep my hands busy. But when the phone buzzed again, I dropped everything. Can we talk? Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's what he wrote. But I knew that if I went, 5 minutes would never be just 5 minutes. I didn't answer. The next morning, I arrived early to pick up Ethan, hoping to avoid him. But the universe isn't that kind. He was outside, helping students carry art supplies to a car. When our eyes met, it felt like the whole world froze, two people pretending they were strangers. He looked exhausted. Not angry, not guilty, just tired. Like someone who'd been holding his breath for too long. Hi, he said quietly when the kids left. Hi. He nodded. I won't text again. I just needed to say that. I wanted to say thank you. Or don't. Or please. But nothing came out. Behind us, the school doors opened, and another teacher called his name. He turned away. And just like that, it was over, or at least, it should have been. That evening, Ethan sat at the table drawing. Mom, he said suddenly, Mr. Carter said he might not be my teacher next year. Why? I froze, staring at the pen in my hand. Maybe he just wants a change, I said softly. But deep down, I already knew. Things break quietly, not with noise, but with silence. And I could feel the cracks spreading. It happened faster than I ever imagined. A parent saw us talking outside one afternoon, nothing more than a few quiet words by his car, but it was enough. Enough to spark a whisper, enough for a story to grow. And once a rumor starts, it doesn't need proof, just breath. By the next morning, the principal called me in. Her tone was careful, professional, but her eyes told me she already knew. We've received a concern, she said slowly. About boundaries. Between you and Mr. Carter. I tried to speak, to deny, to say something, anything, but my voice didn't work. She didn't accuse me. She didn't have to. The silence did that on its own. Mr. Carter resigned before the week ended. He didn't fight it, didn't defend himself. The school sent out a short email thanking him for his service and dedication. No one mentioned why he left. Ethan didn't understand. He just left, Mom. Didn't even say goodbye. I swallowed the guilt like glass. Sometimes grown-ups have to move on, I said softly. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat in the dark with the lamp off, staring at the faint reflection in the window. I thought about the first day I met him, how innocent everything seemed. How simple. And how every choice since then had been one step closer to this moment, this unbearable quiet. He sent one last message the next morning. Please tell Ethan I'm proud of him. Nothing else. No goodbye for me. I deleted it, but my fingers hovered over the screen for a long time before I did. Now, when I walk past the school, I still half expect to see him there, sleeves rolled up, smiling, sunlight in his hair. But there's only an empty classroom and the echo of a voice that once said, "You deserve peace." I finally understood what he meant. Peace doesn't come after love. It comes after losing it.